Hi, my beautiful souls. Welcome back to hashtag love yourself. On today's episode, I wanted to talk about intentions and action and why that's such a huge topic and how it's so intertwined into loving ourselves and being in loving relationships, actually. Okay, so let's dive in. First, let's go over the definitions. And I know that sounds really elementary, right? But I really wanted to kind of hit the nail on the head from the get go of just really what these terms actually mean. So, intention is a thing intended, like an aim, a plan, or goal. Okay. So, it's something that's not like it isn't physical, right? It's just the thought, the intention, the plan, right? Okay, what does action mean? Action is the fact or process of doing something, right? Typically to achieve an aim or a goal or a plan, right? So as you can see, one is like the thought. It's kind of like the first step, right? The intention is our first step. We've got to intend, we've got to dream something up. We've got to have an intention, right? And then second, we have to have an action behind it, because the action, right, is what is that magic ingredient with the intention. When you pair those together, it creates whatever it is that your intention is, right? It creates something here on earth. Okay. Now you might ask me okay, yeah, I get it. I know the definitions of what those are, but why are you explaining this to me? And how does that relate to self-love? And I think I was thinking on it, and I was really vibing on the fact of how important action really is, right? Within not only self-love, but in love in general, right? Because our intentions are really this thing that aren't seen, okay? And they usually stay within our heart and in our minds. It's not usually something that goes beyond that, okay? Sometimes we have conversations with people, right? But usually that stuff stays pretty well hidden. And it's not until you take the action that it actually creates what you want from your heart and mind, right? And so this is really linked to self-love, because there are so many people out there, and I know that I am one of them in the past, right? Not any longer, but in the past, I was one of those people that I remember I kept thinking that I loved myself. Really, I really didn't know how unhealthy I was until I started to learn what health actually was, right? In that regard, and to understand what self-love actually looks like in action form, right? Before I recognized that I wasn't loving myself in the past, and that I thought I was doing, I had an intention, and I thought that that was enough, right? I thought that loving, loving myself in my mind was enough, but that's not enough. Not in this 3D world or reality, essentially, right? It can be enough when we're in heaven, right? When we're not in a physical world and physical bodies with our world is physical, right? That is what the earth is that we're in a physical body, in a physical place, and we create physical things. And from our intentions paired with action, we create something, whether it be something that's felt, whether it be something that is physical that you can hold in your hands, right? But you don't create anything with just intention. And intention, like I said, to me, when I think about it like heavenly. Yeah, in heaven, that's intention's great, and it means something more than it does here on earth, right? Because on earth, you have to have intention created or paired with action to have creation, okay? And so how I think about this is is if your intention is to keep your peace a high priority within your life, right? But you keep allowing toxic people in your life, your intention did nothing, right? Because yeah, your intention was great, right? You wanted to have a peaceful life, but you didn't put up the boundaries, and you kept allowing the unhealthy people to trample all over you. And so essentially your intention meant nothing, right? It meant nothing because you didn't do any of the action to back it up, okay? Next example, if you intend to hold healthy boundaries with people that you love, right? And then when you do set the boundary and you verbally explain it, which I really feel like verbally explaining boundaries is kind of a mistake now that I'm like gotten so good at them. I feel like you really, once you get really powerful, you start to realize like you don't verbally explain it, but beginners need to do that, right? And then people push back on your boundaries like, no, I ain't doing that, right? And if you don't then reinforce your boundary with the repercussion of action that needs to be taken for your boundary being pushed upon, you didn't really hold up the boundary, right? Like it was a great intention, like, oh, I want to be respected. But then when they disrespected you, there was no recourse of saying, well, guess what? Now I have to exit because you disrespected me and I've asked you not to be disrespectful. Like I can't have that in my life. And if you do stay around, you're sending the action, the signal that they can disrespect your boundary, right? And that no, they don't have to be respectful to you. And that is that loving yourself, right? And that's where I wanted to talk about, like, if you, through these examples, we can kind of see that the intention of loving ourselves is great, right? But it means nothing if we don't have the action, right, behind it. Because then the self-love is not there, right? We're not actually loving ourselves when we don't take the action paired with that intention, okay? So, another one that I think is really common, right, is like if you intend to make self-care, right, like whether it be physical self-care for your body or whether it be like just relaxation, respite, whatever it is for you, like if you intend to make the space, but then you put it on like the priority list as like, oh, I got to make money first. I've got to make sure that all my kids' needs are met. I got to make sure the house is clean. And then maybe if I have all these things done, I'll get to my self-care, right? If you do that, then like 9 times out of 10, you're not going to make, right? You're not going to get to that goal of the self-care, right? And that's where I think a lot of us in the way that our world is set up end up running our lives, right? Is like, we really want to love ourselves, okay? But the work, the action of loving ourselves, kind of goes against the grain of how society runs, right? Like society doesn't set you up to love yourself at all. And you really have to stick up for it. Like you have to be like, your will of self-love has to be so much bigger than so many things in your life, because you will know the value of that self-love is actually what is going to lead you to the best life that you've lived, right? To lead you to all your dreams, your desires. Self-love is literally the key to so many things that we want, and we have no idea that that was like the hidden, like illusion. We don't realize that it's that. Because once you put yourself as priority, once you love yourself, once you put all the things that you actually need to thrive, the thriving is so abundant and so large and so huge, right? That all the things that you thought you wanted before, like that you were like, oh, I want that, I want that, I want that. It's like you recognize like, oh, I was only thinking I wanted that because I wanted to be fulfilled, and now I'm fulfilled. And so now like the playing field gets so different. Like then you're like, oh my gosh, right? Like I just want to do things that light me up, right? And then like think of that lifestyle for yourself, living the best life. That is what living the best life is. And so that's why self-love is such an important part of this human experience. But most people, it's hidden from them, and they don't really get it, right? And they don't understand the value of loving, caring, fulfilling, and nurturing you, right? It's just not as big of an importance because they don't really see, like society doesn't promote the proof of the pudding, right? And then the people who are actually loving themselves, right? They're so high on life and they're so off, like skipping and running and jumping and singing their tune, that it's kind of like everybody that's not loving themselves, they don't got time for that, right? So there's this big like distance and gap in like most people and the people that are down and not loving themselves. I'm kind of going off in a little like talk that's wasn't meant to happen, but it's beautiful. All those people that are not loving themselves, they're looking up at the person, right, that's loving themselves, that's fulfilled, that's succeeding, that's like joyful all the time, that all these things are just coming, beautiful things come their way, right? And they're looking up at them like they're like, what's wrong with the world? Right? Like, why do they always get everything that they want? Why are they so damn happy? Right? Take a chill pill, right? Like, I'm not kidding you, because they are unhappy with themselves, right? And so that's why, right? That's why it's really hard for people who don't love themselves and really are not placing the value of self-love in the correct regard for themselves. They're not seeing the proof of the pudding, right? Like, that is why, okay? And so we can intend to love ourselves all day long, baby. But if you aren't actually doing the actions to love yourself, you ain't doing it, boo, right? And I could go over like a million examples, right? I could go, but I have one that I don't know why it came to me, so it must be something for someone out there. So I'm gonna go with it. So okay, for example, right? Like, let's just say a boy has a crush on the cute girl in his high school class, okay? And he thinks the world of her, and she comes in every day with her beautiful, like, smile. She just lights up everybody that she, says hi to, and he is head over heels for her, okay? But he keeps it to himself because he's like kind of a little like when you're a teenager, you're just like, you're nervous, right? You're nervous Nelly, and you're trying to just make it seem like you're not, but you are, right? Like, because you're trying to figure yourself out and you're trying to get people to like you. Like, people pleasing in the teenage stage is so heavy, right? It's not even funny. And he's just like, he wants to ask her to prom, right? He wants to ask this beautiful girl that he has, like, he thinks the world of, right? He doesn't really know her too well because he hasn't gotten the courage up to get close to her, right? But he thinks the world of her, and he's kind of put her on a little pedestal, right? And so he dreams about her, and he gets excited about thinking about her and the thought of like this dream of taking her to prom. Like, he really wants to take her to prom, okay? But ultimately, he's just too nervous. He's plagued by his fear of rejection and worry and about her saying no. Like, that really freaks him out. Like, the idea of like her being like laughing in his face, like, no, like, I don't want to go with you. Like, why would I go with you? Right. So he has like that battle going on for himself. Right. And he clearly isn't loving himself when he's giving into his fears, when he is like thinking of rejection. That's not loving yourself. Right. That's not like being confident. Right. But no one, not even that pretty girl, can see his intention, because intentions aren't something physical that you can see, right? And even if that girl, right, she could feel it, even if, because there's some people out there that can feel that stuff, right? There's nothing that really she could do about it, even if she felt it, right? Because she deserves someone to ask her to prom. She deserves someone like being like man enough or girl enough to ask her to prom, right? And to face their fear, she has to be worth it in their mind more than the fear is worth it, right? Like, they have to place their desire to get to know her and to take her to prom above the fears, right? And so she deserves that, and she knows that. So even if she feels his intention, that intention means nothing, because like, he doesn't take the action to ask, right? And so it's kind of like that same old story that you've heard a million times. Have you heard like people going to like their high school like reunions like 20 years, 30 years later, and then you actually like, you're kind of like in a different space, you're married at that point usually, and like you're able to freely talk to people and be like, oh my God, I had the biggest crush on you like when I was in ninth grade or whatever. And then people are like, oh my God, I had the biggest crush on you, and you compare and you're like, we never like got there. And the reason why is because people are not like, they're not allowing themselves to take the action, right? And so really that is just a clear-cut example that shows like, oh, and then so the end of the story is that the girl ends up going to prom with someone else, okay? She gets another date because someone has Someone has the guts to ask her, and then that guy is like standing alone at prom, literally watching her like a sad movie, right? Like she's in her beautiful dress. She never looked better. Her hair's all done up because her mom gave her the money, right? And she's looking bomb, right? And she's having the time of her life with someone else. Okay, but like how, like that, I just wanted to set a little scene of an example for you guys of to be like, to show you like intention means nothing, right? You're never going to get anywhere in life, and you're never going to get anywhere in your self-love journey if you just have the intention. If you just listen to my words and then don't take it and apply it into action in your life. And the only person that can do that stuff is you. The only one that can take that action is you, baby. You can't expect anything to just magically be served to you in this lifetime, and it's not going to, right? And why would we want that? We wouldn't come down to earth if that, like, we would have just stayed in heaven, right? It's the action that is important in this earthly realm, right? Because in this world, this 3D reality we live in, it's a physical world. We physically create things. It's the playground of creation. Like, so intention just by itself does nothing. It has to be paired with the action. Okay. And so, one of the things that is really important to me when I'm loving myself, right, is to make sure that, like, okay, so I'll curb the behavior of being stuck in just my intentions by really asking myself, like, in all moments, right? Like, I ask that one question, and is this action that I'm taking in alignment with loving myself? Okay. And I do this, I hyper focus this question, like extremely, like enlarge it, like almost like I'm screaming it at myself when I start to feel off. Okay. So not only do I ask that question of myself when I'm feeling good and I'm doing things like that, like light me up, right? Like, is this loving myself, right? Like, are these actions today that I'm taking, is it part of loving myself, right? And if the answer is no, then you have to really dig deep and figure out why you're doing it then, right? Like, is it an old unhealthy behavior, right? Is it your people pleaser habits getting in the way of your creation, of creating a life of self-love and creating not of just self-love, because that's what this whole thing about self-love is, just the ticket to be able to love in general, right? Because you can't love other people unless then you're doing it to yourself, right? You can't have a fulfilling life if you're not fulfilling you, right? It just doesn't work. Like, you can't shine outwardly something that is not first within you, right? And so that's another thing to think of, is that when you are really like in that space, right, of like discontent, or like your nervous system starts kicking in, like, and you feel something that's off, right? That is kind of like the inside of you, or like, I like to say the higher version of me, right? But everybody's different, whatever, however you want to think of it. But it's like waving a white flag and like being like, wait a minute, hey, please don't miss this opportunity to stay on course, right? And so when you really start doing the work to love yourself, you have to be able to like slow down in those moments where something feels off to you, right? Whether it be within a relationship with someone else, making a decision for like your work career, whether it be making a decision for money-wise stuff, like you have to be able to slow down and be like kind of almost like that, like, what would Jesus do statement, right? Like, pair the, like if you use that, but like, or even if you don't use that, but like pair that with, is this action that I'm taking in alignment with loving myself? Like, is this gonna be part of loving myself? If it's a no, then I'd say it's a no-go in your life, right? When you love yourself, you know that is the number one rule of living in existence, is that you need to be loving yourself at all moments, at all times, in all actions of everything that you do. So, I have a good example that just happened to me recently that will kind of showcase for you guys, the whole like you kind of feeling something's off, right? And for you to slow down, right? And really think about it. So recently I applied for a job, right? And I applied for it online. And when you apply online for jobs, like, usually they have like a space where they want you to click your availability. And because I love myself and because I vowed to myself that even though I'm a single mom, that I will never, like, I'll still be a stay-at-home mom when my kids are home, okay? That I will never put them in the care of other people, predominantly, right? Like, there are times, because I run my own business, that like when I do teach classes and things like that, I do have to, rely on like loved ones, that they are like well versed with and things like that. But I have made that a promise before I even made kids, that I would be with them at all times. So my schedule for an employer really sucks, because not only do I run my own business, I already have another little side gig that like kind of is fun, but it's changing. And so that's why I was kind of like wanting to like tap into something else and see the vibe of somewhere else, right? And so I was like putting in my my availability, and it's kind of weird and wonky. And like I knew that on the computer it just seemed really like, probably an employer would be like, why are you even applying? Like, what are you doing? Like, that's not like the hours. Like, why? Right? So I knew that going in, but I loved myself enough, and I had kind of like this strong feeling about it. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to apply anyways. And so I put my schedule in. I didn't lie, right? I was like really honest, and then didn't hear back from them. Like I knew I probably wouldn't. Right. And when I, finally I was like, okay, I need to go in there to have them feel my vibe, right? To like let the manager meet me, because I'm like a force. Like when you meet me, like you feel me, right? Like, and you feel my energy, and like you get to know me at a level that you can't on my resume. But like that doesn't make any sense to them, right? And so I went in there, I shook her hand. She said to me immediately, she was like, I do not have any more positions open. I am completely like hired up, all these things, right? And I just told her, no worries. I told her I'm really a meant to be type person, but I wanted to meet you in person. And like, if anything comes up in the future and, like this weird schedule, because she's like, and your schedule, she's like, I did look at it and I was like, there's no way. And I was like, yeah, no, and I know that. And I said, but I thought I'd just come meet you and check you, like let you check me out and see, get to know me a little bit. And I, went on my merry little way. Well, no longer than 2 days after that, I get a message saying that like, oh, like that maybe that I would work, right? Like that it would, like she hadn't thought about how like great that would be to have like a person that could like kind of fill in the gaps, right? Right. So she's like, can you come in for an interview? But this is the thing, is that I know that you said that you could only work these specific hours because you need to be with your kids. But I need someone till this time, like, and even just during training, like you have to be here during training during these hours. And when I first got that text, right, I was like it came to me, and like my nervous system was like I'm such a people pleaser, right? Like in the past, like I wanted to make it easy for everybody, and I wanted the things that I wanted. So like I would this job is kind of like not super cool, but it was like, yeah, it's like a job that I desire. Of course, that's why I applied, right? And so I was like, thinking to myself, like, like if I want something, like kind of like getting it at all costs is how I used to live my life when I didn't love myself, right? Like really parting the seas to make sure things happen that I wanted, right? Instead of allowing things to just be, what's meant to be, right? And if it's meant to be, it'll work out. If it's not, then it won't. And you move on your merry little way and something else will come along, right? And so it was funny because at first that unhealthy piece of me that wanted to reply back to her, or like wanted me to like reach out to every single source in my life that could maybe watch my kids during that training week and really make it hard on everyone else and hard on myself and stressful for me and all these things. Like I wanted to like give in to her demands, right? And then I thought about it, and I kept just like really hearing my heart of like my self-love piece of like, is this in alignment with loving myself? And the answer was no, because it would not only stress you out to put that burden onto other people, it would stress you out for the kids to be without you during the week, for just 1 week, right? And that's not in alignment. Like you being stressed out is not in alignment with loving yourself, okay? And that's why I wanted to bring this story up. And so I literally just was really point blank with her. I was like, thank you so much for reaching out. That sounds awesome, except for, I would, just like I told you in person, I would not ever be available, like not even once. Like it's not a thing for me to leave my children in the care of other people. Like that's just not my desire, right? That's not loving myself. I don't want to do that. That's not a thing for me. And then she replied back, I still want to interview you, right? And so that's the thing that you have to like really like understand, is that like if I would have taken the action for myself that wasn't loving, right? And just did it to people please, that's not loving myself. And I have to really stay focused and stay in alignment with what's best and what fulfills me, because at the end of the day, that's who's driving your ship, right? That is who's taking care of you, right? Yeah, of course you're going to have loving, intimate relationships with people that fill you up in different ways, but ultimately you are like, those are like your branches and you are like the tree trunk, right? And if the tree trunk, if it's diseased, the branches don't mean nothing, right? You can't live from a place that of like of lack of love for yourself and expect everything else that stems from that to thrive. Like that tree example is a perfect example. You can't expect to chop down the trunk of a tree and have the branches still be alive. There's no way to do it, right? Like your relationships only survive and only can be as healthy as you are with you. That's the only thing, right? And so make sure that your actions are paired with your intentions of loving yourself, right? And then once you kind of get to that place of like you're really doing it for yourself, right? Or even you can do this before, like I had to do them simultaneously when I had like a big life event when I was getting divorced, right? Is that you really have to look at all your relationships and be honest with yourself about people's actions, right? I think if you're having a hard time like getting through the self-love stuff, maybe just focus on you first, right? Because then once you get to a like a good strong spot of like healthy intentions for yourself paired with healthy actions, creating a healthy lifestyle for yourself, you'll start to be able to look at other people and pinpoint clearly, right? You'll be able to be like, their actions aren't in alignment with what I want, what I desire, right? Or they are, right? They are in alignment with what I want in my life, right? And so I wish someone would have taught me this when I was young. I wish I would have gotten this lesson of it's people's actions that matter, right? Because their intentions mean nothing to you in your life and really mean nothing in this 3D world that we live in, okay? And so, like, for example, this is a really good way for you, like, to understand. I keep hearing, like, this voice of someone that's, like, arguing me as I'm talking, and they're like, but they have a loving soul, right? Cool. I don't care. In this 3D world on Earth that you live in your meat sack, right? Their soul really means a lot less than you think it does on this earth plane, right? Like their soul is great, cool in the 5D, but here on the earth, it's their actions. It's about what they do and don't back up with love. It's how they treat people with kindness and concern. It's about peaceful actions. It's about loving actions. It's about really truly them loving themselves. And if they're really truly loving themselves, they can love other people properly. But if it's funny because I've been watching people lately, even like from a distance, right? In like, you know, in my life. And you don't have to be up close and personal with them to really see how, like, once you start doing the work to love you, to see if people are really doing the work to love them, because you can spot like people not loving themselves. When you have lived a whole lifetime of not loving yourself and then you switch gears and you start to really do the work, like it really imprints what it takes, right? And then you can look at people and you can look at their life and you can be like, yeah, they're talking with their mouths and saying, or their energy is saying, I want this, right? Like, I want this in my life. I want happiness. I want blah, 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 blah. But are they taking actions in their life to be happy? Right? Are they happy? Like, right? Are they, are their actions in alignment with our intentions? Right? or what they're even saying. Because a lot of the times, like if you can't feel intentions, because that's an energy, if you can't feel energy from people, if you're just going based off of what they're saying to you, right, is like what they're giving you, that lip service, is that matching up with their actions. And that's a thing too. I think that was another thing that I really wish that someone would have taught me when I was young. I really wish that someone would have had like a heart to heart, like sit down with me and been like, okay, in general, people are going to be really good at talking sweetly to you and telling you all the things that you want to hear. But how, like, what actions do they give you, right? Are they there for you when you really need them, right? I wish I would have like been more awake to that, right? How do they show up for you? What are they doing in the relationship to keep the relationship healthy and thriving, right? Yeah, really taking a look at people really clearly and saying, are they on your level, right, with their actions, right? Because that's the thing, is when you love yourself, you really start to understand what an amazing human being and what an amazing energy source and what an amazing soul you are, right? That has like come into physical form, and what amazing human you are. And you start to like understand that the value of who you are, like it dictates who can really be around you, right? And they're only as good as their actions, ever. Like in this 3D world. Maybe on the other side it's different, right? Maybe in heaven, intention, I feel like I don't know everything, but I feel like it would weigh more over there, right? Because I bet you we could feel the intention more. The intention wouldn't need to come to this fruition type stage that we have here on earth. Like that's kind of like how I feel about it. But yeah, on earth, people are only as good as their actions, right? Life is only as good as its actions. Like you can, like intention means nothing here, really, truly. And then, so making sure that you're pairing your intentions with your actions, that you're loving yourself through your actions. Because if you're not really loving yourself. And then really, requesting the same from the people around you. That's how you'll be able to be a good, like, security guard or a bouncer at the door of you, right? Is to be able to identify their true actions. Like, and like, that's the thing too, is like when you're getting to know people, right? Like, people make mistakes, right? Just like you make mistakes, right? Everybody makes mistakes, right? But when they're chronic, right? That's where they're at, honestly, to tell you the truth. And when they're big actions, right? Like, like, I don't know, I'm trying to give you like pull an example out of my head, but like this is like not showing up for you, right? When they're constantly not showing up for you, right? Then that just means that that's where they're at. They're not on your level. They're not on your train, right? And you have to know that like, it's okay. Everybody gets to be where they're at. Not everybody is going to learn at the pace. Not everybody's going to be on a self-love journey like you, right? Like not everybody. And that's another thing that I think is really important to talk about with this, like, intentions and actions within love and self-love, right? Is that the work that you're doing. So the people that are like listening to this podcast, right? That are listening to improve themselves and actually taking the action to do so, right? You're really in a small percentage of emotional intelligence on our earth, okay? And that's the thing, is so you're going to find it, like I hear this across the board all the time, is that people are like, especially people that, like have big life events that force them to really start to like wake up and learn to love themselves and be healthy, right? It's like a really small percentage, that 0.01%, right, of people who take their health and their life seriously and like, their self-fulfillment, all that good stuff, right? It's a really small percentage of our world and our societies. And so it's hard to find other like-minded people, like once you get once you get like really going on this journey, right? It's hard to find them. I mean, it's easy to see all the people that are like kind of crashing down around you that you're like, oh damn, you're on that level. Boo, sorry, bye Felicia. It's kind of hard because then you're like, oh, there's not a lot of people loving themselves out there, right? So if you're listening to this content, you're probably loving yours, like especially if you've gotten to the end of this episode, you're loving yourself. You're in that space, right? You're really trying to do the work and put in the action. But it can get it can get like lonely sometimes of like damn, there's so many people out there that need to be loving themselves, right? And that's the thing is like just recognizing like not everybody's going to be on the fast track, right? Not everybody's going to be on that accelerated rate to being emotionally intelligent and to living their best life. Not everybody has that drive or that willpower, right? Not everybody's in that space. But so just be grateful for the people that show up that you're like, oh, damn, you love yourself too, or you're working on loving yourself too, right? And you're shining, right? So just, it makes you appreciate them a little bit more and in a different way, right? Okay, well, I think that was all that I had for intentions and action. But I hope that you gleaned something beautiful out of this information because I know that, like I said, I was vibing on it. It just kept coming to me and I was like, ooh, I know I need to share it. So, all right, hope you have a wonderful day and don't forget, love yourself. Okay, bye.